While at the beach with my grandkids, an amazing secret was revealed. Leave quietly. Don't say. Standing on the sun-kissed shores of Cape Cod, John felt an invigorating mix of joy and nostalgia. The beach was alive with the sounds of laughter, his 3 exuberant grandkids losing themselves in the symphony of waves lapping against the sand. As they shaped elaborate sandcastles, John's heart ached with memories of his own childhood, a time spent navigating humble beginnings, where education was the thin thread tethering his family's hopes to a better future. His parents worked tirelessly, sacrifices etched in every wrinkle on their faces, their dreams blazing on for him even as society held him at bay. Yet, beneath the son's warm embrace, an undercurrent of anxiety churned within him. He felt the weight of the moment. This trip was meant to be a celebration, a carefree time with the grandkids. But a troubling dilemma had struck. What if they knew the hidden stories behind their lineage? What if they learned that the man who shaped their family's history had brilliance that remained cloaked in obscurity? Waves crashed behind him, but a flicker of something darker overshadowed his nostalgia. That fateful afternoon, an encounter with an old friend he hadn't seen since leaving his small hometown, stirred more than just scattered memories. With every word spoken, his heart quickened, and remnants of a family secret came spilling forth. An inventor, his grandfather had once graced the pages of history, yet no legacy remained, diminished by the tides of time and prejudice. John's breath became uneven as he wrestled with the idea: how could he face his grandkids, sharing a story that intertwines greatness with the harsh reality of societal neglect? Caught up in their joy, John's grandkids shoved seashells into buckets, laughter high and bright. They possessed no knowledge of the burden weighing heavily upon him. The sun was blazing, but John felt the chill of contempt towards the past creeping in. Should he shatter the innocent illusion? Leave quietly. Don't say, he whispered, gravelly urgency spilling from his lips as he noticed the children's wide-eyed wonder. He hesitated, caught in the web of conflicting emotions. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The moment hung around him like mist as guilt coiled into his heart. Deep within, John wrestled with the urge to lift the veil, to expose the tapestry of pain, pride, and brilliance woven into their history. But was that the right path? Would recounting his grandfather's neglected genius overshadow the principles of humility and resilience he had tried to instill in them? The delicate intensity of the sunset mirrored the conflict within, vibrant yet hiding shadows that threatened to engulf him. Meanwhile, the noise of happiness around him felt like a taunt. Could their lives be reshaped by the truths he was too afraid to disclose? John inhaled sharply, the pressure building in his chest as the realization settled like sand in the confines of his mind. The horizon swirled with red and gold, as the setting sun heralded uncertainty, an omen of revelations waiting to unfold. His heart raced in rhythm with the waves, torn between guarding the past or revealing a legacy too brilliant to remain dormant. Would his grandkids see him differently? Or would knowledge serve to draw them closer? The beach felt both liberating and imprisoning, setting the stage for a journey of discovery with potentially irrevocable consequences. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows that stretched like fingers of doubt across the sand. John's gaze remained fixed on the horizon, where the sky met the ocean in a dance of fiery colors. As he tried to absorb the beauty before him, his thoughts spun further into turmoil, magnifying the weight of his grandfather's legacy, which now felt like a burden he could no longer ignore. He inhaled deeply, feeling the salty breeze fill his lungs, a futile attempt to push away the knot of anxiety tightening around his heart. His grandkids continued to squeal with delight, their joy tinged with innocence, oblivious to the struggles of the past. "Hey, Grandpa!" one of them called out, interrupting his spiral. "Come help us build the tallest castle. We need the master builder." Their excitement drew John back to the present, but it only intensified the churning questions within him. The sandcastle they sculpted was a reflection of their imaginations, extravagant towers and turrets rising above the shoreline. In that moment, John realized he was shaping something to a narrative, rich and complex, that involved not just his grandfather but the very essence of who they were as a family. Did he dare let slip the intricate threads of genius and tragedy woven into their history? As John plunged his hands into the cool, damp sand, he felt an urgent pull to confront the fears that had haunted him for decades. Would the truth of his grandfather's genius serve as a springboard for his grandkids to soar higher, or would it shackle them to the weight of unfulfilled dreams? It struck him that he had always been an advocate for believing in the brilliance of others, yet he'd avoided accepting his own. Why had he let societal neglect mute the vibrancy of his ancestry? Perhaps the secret wasn't a family curse after all, but a legacy of resilience, creativity, and unrecognized potential. Let us make it bigger. He shouted, a newfound vigor infusing his voice as he began to mold more sand, alongside his grandkids. With each handful, he felt more liberated, grappling less with guilt and more with the aspiration to inspire. They worked as a team, laughter and collaboration lightening the increasing weight of his thoughts. The sandy towers began to take form, and John considered the stories trapped within him. He had inadvertently shielded his family from a story that could empower them. Infusing his newfound insight into their activity, he turned to them and said, "You know, every castle has its own story. Sometimes big dreams come from small beginnings, just like how this castle started." "Did it?" his youngest asked, eyes wide with curiosity. "Absolutely," John replied, feeling a wave of determination wash over him. "And just like how we're building this castle, my grandpa once built something magnificent, too, even if the world didn't always see it." The children cheered, their imaginative minds racing at the prospect of hidden greatness. But John felt a weight unbalanced, as words bubbled just beneath the surface. Would he dare share the details, or keep the mystery intact for a bit longer? Faced with an impending decision, John's pulse quickened. Was he ready to delve deeper into a family legacy that was as much about triumph as it was about loss? That evening, as the sun melted into the sea, John stood on the shifting sands, a crossroads of history and legacy before him. The line between protection and empowerment began to blur, and in that mingling, a new sense of purpose ignited within him. The journey of self-discovery pressed against him like the cool evening air. Was he ready to confront the echoes of the past that had called him to step into a light he had long shunned? The moment of truth was fast approaching. How long could he keep the depths of his lineage hidden as the curiosity of his grandkids beckoned for more? The cool evening air began to settle, wrapping around John like a comforting blanket while the shadows grew deeper around him. He stood at the water's edge, contemplating the emerging tide, thoughts drifting like sea foam. The question was no longer merely whether he could reveal the truth about his grandfather's legacy. It was a matter of necessity both for himself and his grandkids. The thrill surrounding the idea of a hidden legacy twisted into dread, igniting the passive fear within him. Suddenly, one of his grandkids tugged on his shirt, breaking the cresting wave of his thoughts. "Grandpa, will you tell us more about what you said earlier? What did your grandpa build?" This innocent curiosity brought a sharp stab of anxiety, yet it also stirred something more profound within him, a yearning to connect, to share a part of himself he had kept shackled. "Build, huh?" he echoed, the word tasting strange yet invigorating on his tongue. He remembered the stories related to architecture and creativity, a history marked not just by achievement but by struggles and failures that shaped his family. It was time to sift through the remnants of his fears and transform them into tales of aspiration. "All right," he said, kneeling so he could look each child directly in the eye. "There's a lot to unpack, but it's important. My grandfather designed things that turned out to be beautiful designs the world never recognized." The children's wide eyes reflected an appetite for adventure, and a flicker of his past ambition ignited within him. As he began sharing tales of his grandfather's artistry, the intricate bridges that spanned mundane rivers, the stunning homes that whispered stories of families at their doorstep, John realized he was not merely recounting facts. He was breathing life into an ethos of creativity that had lain dormant for years. Each tale built upon the last, weaving an emotional tapestry rich with both light and shadow. Sometimes, he would work on a project for years, he continued, the narrative unfolding like the waves lapping at the shore. And in the end, it didn't always go as we hoped. But that's part of the journey. The children leaned closer, mesmerized. What happened to his buildings? The youngest asked, a furrow of concern forming between her brows. They weren't built, he admitted, each word heavier than the last. The truth felt liberating, yet heavy. The world wasn't ready for them. Or maybe he was too ahead of his time. The admission carved deeper into the weight he had always carried. Yes, perhaps it was a hidden strength all along that had made his grandfather different. But he didn't stop trying, did he? The middle child questioned, and John's heart warmed at the instinct for resilience their young minds recognized. No, he didn't, John confirmed with newfound assertiveness. He was relentless. And now, seeing you all here, I realize we should carry that passion forward. Tell stories, create castles in the sand and in our hearts. Because even if the world seemed to overlook us, we have immense potential to make something extraordinary. There. The words tumbled forth, a catalyst for change within himself and for those who would inherit the legacy. An electric possibility surged through John. No longer would he hide in the shadows of his ancestry. No longer would he allow fear to hold back a history that deserved celebration. The sky darkened overhead, a sign of the approaching night, but a spark remained alive within him. He resolved to face the challenges that lay ahead, working to lift the shroud from his lineage and project its values onto future generations. As they returned to their castle building, a flicker of purpose shone brighter than ever. Just before he began compressing sand into a tall turret, he whispered to himself, the time had come to face not just the legacy, but the truths lurking under the surface. But an unsettling thought surfaced: if he shared his truth, would it truly resonate, or would it open old wounds he wasn't prepared to face? With a lingering doubt, he pondered what came next on this journey of self-discovery. Would he uncover more about the inner strength untapped by both him and his grandfather? The answer felt close, brewing like the surf ready to crash against the shore. But for now, the echoes of his past lingered in the solitude of twilight, uncharted. The following morning washed over John like the rising sun pushing away shadows of night, illuminating thoughts that had been cloaked in uncertainty. Standing again at the water's edge, he felt the pull of the tide, a metaphor for the life force within him, urging him to embrace the currents of his family's legacy. His grandkids laughed in the distance, unaware of the transformation taking place within their grandfather. John closed his eyes, inhaling the salty air, his previous day's revelations echoing in his mind. He felt invigorated yet burdened. There was an undeniable truth that churned inside him, demanding to be expressed, yet an equally heavy weight of fear of vulnerability. He had ignited a spark in the children, but what about his own flame? It was still flickering within layers of unaddressed doubt. Determined to confront it, John shifted into action. He decided to spend the day in the local library, diving into the dusty archives that housed the remnants of his grandfather's pursuits. As he navigated the aisles of neglected literature and irrelevant blueprints, a sense of urgency guided him. This journey wasn't just about rediscovering his grandfather's art, it was about reclaiming parts of himself that had long been silenced. As he unearthed books filled with old architectural blueprints, he stumbled upon a simple notebook tucked between the pages. Opening it, he discovered notes and sketches that revealed not only designs but also dreams, works his grandfather had envisioned but never completed. Each line was an unfurling story of ambition and resilience mirrored against John's own struggles. The excitement of that moment was palpable. It was as if his grandfather's spirit reached through time, whispering encouragement. You are part of this legacy. Build something, John, the words resonated within him. Here lay creative vigor waiting for someone to revive it. That someone could indeed be him. But as he flipped through the pages, the shadows of self-doubt loomed large. He questioned whether he had the capability to honor these dreams, to give life to ideas that had once seemed too grand, even for his talented grandfather. What if he faltered, just as his grandfather had? What if the world still wasn't ready? These thoughts clawed at him, but alongside them bubbled a fierce determination. He would not let fear lock him in a cage of complacency, as it had done for so long. The realization hit him: the world could never be fully ready, for true innovation often resides in uncharted waters. He owed it to himself and the children who looked up to him to explore the depths and share those discoveries. As he made his way back to the beach, notebook in hand, a morsel of excitement began to unfurl inside him. It wasn't just about revealing his grandfather's legacy anymore. It was about initiating his Renaissance, one where he could cultivate creativity, even if the result remained uncertain. He imagined teaching his grandkids about design and architecture, inclusivity and creativity, and the unapologetic pursuit of one's dreams. Upon reaching the beach, the sight of his grandkids busy with sandcastles sparked a powerful reflection of creation echoing in simplicity. A mix of anxiety and exhilaration surged through him, for he now glimpsed his path forward. "Kids!" he called out, drawing their attention away from their castles. "How about we explore a new project?" They rushed towards him, their faces lighting up with curiosity. John inhaled deeply, the past merging with the present as he spoke. It was a leap of faith into vulnerability and authenticity. Suddenly, he became acutely aware of a decision he had to make, to lean fully into this new journey or turn back out of fear. An urgency pulled at him. What if pushing forward into uncharted territory meant finally sharing his discoveries with others? But what awaited him beyond this moment? Would he find not only his grandfather's legacy but his own hidden talents, or would he face the painful remnants of the past once more? The sea roared nearby, each wave echoing the ambivalence of his thoughts. He could feel the tides changing, though uncertain, he felt ready to pull in deeper. Each movement echoed possibilities dormant for too long. Yet his heart raced what awaited him on this journey of self-discovery as he turned his gaze towards the horizon. As John gathered his grandkids around him, he could feel the weight of the moment pressing down like the salty spray of the ocean. Their eager faces were a mirror of his own curiosity, igniting a spark within him that demanded to be nurtured. He held the notebook tightly, the sketches and dreams of his grandfather spilling over his consciousness like the tides at his feet. "Let us build something together," he proposed, his mind racing with possibilities. "Something that combines your ideas with mine, something inspired by the world around us." The initial hesitation he had felt began to dissipate, replaced by a burgeoning enthusiasm that he desperately craved to share. But what would they create? Something functional? A piece of art? Or perhaps a structure that transformed their childhood beach into a canvas of imagination? "Can we make a castle?" His youngest grandchild piped up, her eyes wide with excitement. "Or a slide that goes right into the water?" Another echoed. Their suggestions flooded him with renewed energy, and a challenge washed over him. It wasn't just about engaging them, it was about stepping into his own potential and breaking free from the shackles of self-doubt. He envisioned melding their playful creativity with designs inspired by the sketches in his grandfather's notebook. "Sure. But how about we build something that serves more than just looks? What if we created a playground that embodies what we love about this beach?" As he spoke, John pictured various elements they could incorporate: a sandbar that transitioned into a slide, a fort-like structure that inspired exploration. A soft laughter erupted from his grandkids as they began throwing out ideas. "We could use driftwood. And seashells." The waves whispered through the air, mingling with their laughter, framing an unseen force that was coaxing John to act on his inclinations. But lurking beneath that excitement was an unsettling thought. What if he failed? What if his grandkids resented him for attempting something that never materialized? Doubt began to creep in again, a shadow dancing just at the corner of his resolve. He remembered his grandfather's unfulfilled ambitions, which left behind a haunting silence that John didn't want to replicate. The fear of leaving behind a legacy of regret clashed violently with his desire to be a source of inspiration. "Let us sketch it out first," he suggested, shoving the improvised thoughts aside, focusing on practicality instead. As he unearthed his grandfather's sketchbook, the children gathered around, eyes wrapped with intrigue. The lines, once dormant, transformed into a visual language of creativity, shared and communal. They began doodling, mixing colorful markers with scribbles that turned into whimsical drawings of castles, slides, and secret passageways. John marveled at the spontaneous fluidity of their ideas. Each stroke infused with laughter, evolved from timid beginnings to bold expressions of their combined visions, grounding him. Finally, a burst of adrenaline surged through him. He would invest in this project, not as mere recreators of a beach, but as craftsmen of their own destinies together. But that thought led to another uneasiness. What if he tapped into deeper currents? What if sharing this process illuminated pathways to his own aspirations, and by doing so, required him to expose parts of himself he had kept hidden? Would he have the courage to nurture his own dreams while guiding theirs? As they wrapped up for the day, a mixture of pride and anxiety knotted in his chest. He had begun something, opening a door to potential, but he wondered, what if the act of creation unveiled more than just physical structures? Could it become a catalyst for revisiting his past setbacks and confronting them squarely? The sun was beginning to sink low in the sky, casting golden hues across the water. He watched his grandkids play, enveloped in their world of joyful construction, their energy infectious. It wasn't just a moment of discovery, it was an awakening. Pushing away the fear, he allowed himself a whisper of hope there would be no more hiding. Perhaps it was time to reveal not just the legacy of his grandfather, but his own buried talents. But as he began to form a plan, a sudden unease clutched at him. Had he truly prepared to face what might emerge from this shared endeavor? He looked toward the horizon, knowing that an untested challenge lay ahead. Drawing in a breath, the ocean breeze teasing his skin, John felt the tide of change. Would this venture unravel buried fears or weave together the threads of his family's past and his own future? And what secrets would he unearth about himself in the process? The following morning dawned crisp and promising, as if the universe itself were imbued with the energy of new beginnings. John rose before his grandkids, the sketches from their previous day still lingering in his mind like an unfinished symphony. Inspiration coursed through him, an electrifying reminder that he was not only a caretaker of memories but also a creator of moments yet to come. As he prepared breakfast, he reflected on his plan. The idea of constructing something tangible with his grandkids had become less about buildings or playgrounds and increasingly about fostering a dynamic relationship. Could he break down barriers not only in his creative pursuits but also in his emotional intimacy with them? The thought was unsettling. He set out the toast and fruit as the children shuffled in, their energy palpable. "Okay, team," he rallied, heart racing with anticipation. "Today, we start the real work on our project." Their faces lit up, a physical manifestation of unrestrained joy that anchored him momentarily. After breakfast, they headed to the beach, the salty air invigorating their spirits. John spread out the sketches, noting how the children flipped through pages filled with vibrant colors and imaginative forms. "Remember our ideas?" he began, leaning in. "What if we refine them? Let us choose what excites us the most." But as he spoke, uneasiness nestled into the corners of his mind. This was no longer just about building, it was an exploration of dreams his and theirs. Would they truly accept his participation, or would they see him as just a guiding hand? He needed to convey that he was just as eager to learn from their youthful exuberance. "What if we build a giant fort, and each of us has a special place?" one grandchild suggested, eyes sparkling with possibility. The suggestion brightened the collective enthusiasm, igniting a fervor of inventive ideas. Yet, John felt a wave of apprehension as he entertained the prospect of ownership in their creations. How could they create together when a part of him hesitated to share his own vulnerabilities? "Let us think about what a fort means," he mused aloud, trying to navigate his own insecurities. "It can be a safe space where we all express ourselves. What if we included secret places for each of us to show what we enjoy?" The dialogue grew louder, like the increasing crescendo of the ocean waves. They imagined secret compartments filled with treasures and hidden chambers that reflected their wishes and dreams. Excitement trickled through him, infusing the foundations of his latent ambition. Yet with every laugh and idea shared, the question loomed larger: would he have the courage to share his past? Did he even know himself well enough to express those hidden elements? After a round of brainstorming sketches, John proposed they start gathering materials. The children dashed towards the dunes, laughing as they collected driftwood and seashells. Each piece was a part of the beach, and now, a piece of their creation. "You see," he thought, "this beach belongs to all of us." John felt a rush of determination. In the lively chaos of the beach, he could see fragments of himself resurfacing alongside his grandchildren's perspective, shards of creativity and enthusiasm he had buried under the weight of life's responsibilities. As they worked, John decided to share something from his own past. "When I was younger," he began, tentatively, "my grandfather tried to build something special too, but it never came to life. I always wondered what it felt like to finish something I started." The children paused, and for a moment, the air felt thick with understanding. "Can we help you?" one child asked, innocence overcoming apprehension. "Absolutely," he agreed, a renewed sense of purpose filling him as courage replaced hesitation. Sharing that piece of vulnerability was a revelation, and as they constructed, he began to realize he was not just uncovering his own dreams, he was also unveiling the intricate threads of their collective narrative. But hidden beneath that newfound connection was another underlying fear. As they delved deeper into this project, what more would he have to confront from his past? What if revealing his history opened doors he wasn't ready to explore? In the midst of laughter and creativity, a sudden wave of fear washed over him. Could he truly navigate the delicate balance between guiding his grandchildren and confronting his demons? As the sun dipped closer to the horizon, casting a golden glow on their project, John felt the stakes rising. The moment had arrived to truly embrace this journey together, but were the complexities behind his own past too profound to overcome? Would they all emerge into the light, or would shadows from his history cast a pall over their shared endeavor? As twilight settled gently over the beach, enveloping John and his grandchildren in its warm embrace, he took a deep breath. The shifting sands beneath their feet felt like the passage of time itself, each grain a memory, a moment shared. Their fort in progress rose defiantly against the evening sky, each piece of driftwood telling a story, a testament to their collective creativity. Still, despite the laughter and excitement, John's internal dialogue churned. Doubts flickered like the fading light. Would sharing more about his grandfather's unfulfilled dreams guide them forward or anchor them in his own failures? He found himself grappling with the paradox of vulnerability and leadership. In this act of creation, was he to be just a mentor, or could he also be a student of their innocence? "Hey, Grandpa! Look!" one of his grandchildren cried, holding up a bright blue shell, its surface glinting like a precious gem against the twilight. "Can we use this piece in our fort?" The child's exuberance momentarily pulled him from his turmoil. "Of course," John replied, his voice betraying an eagerness that surprised even him. As he watched the kids embellishing their coastal sanctuary with found treasures, a thought struck him relentlessly. Perhaps the real construction wasn't of their fort, but rather of the relationships being built within it. Stepping back, he allowed himself a moment of reflection. What had initially started as a physical project now morphed into something profoundly deeper. Their laughter echoed like a soundtrack to his revelations, each giggle liberating him a bit more from his fears. Could it be that encapsulating his vulnerabilities would strengthen their bond instead of fracturing it? As the children continued to work, John contemplated the ghost of his grandfather, the man who had aimed for greatness yet had only left him questions. The weight of those unfulfilled expectations pressed down on him. Did he possess the strength to rise above that legacy? "Can we make the inside cozy?" another grandchild suggested, promptly breaking his chain of thought. "Like, with blankets and pillows? And maybe a little lantern?" "Neat idea," he acknowledged, then hesitated, his heart quickening. Should he weave into their design a shared legacy through not only creativity but also the warmth of memory? The idea took root within him, blossoming into a realization. He needed to infuse his story into their creation alongside their wild imaginations. His life's fragments could serve as foundational blocks. They could learn from his journey, transform his failures into lessons, not shackles. "Why don't I tell you some stories while we work? Stories of my adventures and how I learned from them," he proposed, his voice carrying a tremor of excitement mixed with apprehension. Each child paused, squaring their eyes on him, curiosity sparking from their depths. "Yeah. Tell us about your fort too." Another chimed in, and suddenly, John felt the momentum shift. They didn't merely want to build a fort, they wanted to understand the man who initiated this adventure. "All right then," he began, feeling the narrative unfold. It all started with my grandfather and the dream he had as he shared his past. John's words layered insights upon each draft of their construction, his vulnerability seamlessly integrating into their creative process, the shadows of his history bending into the warm light of acceptance and discovery. The children listened, openly, reflecting on his tales, returning to their own designs, and soon laughter echoed anew around a shared understanding. But as the evening deepened, he stumbled upon an obstacle. The fears that had once given him pause began to resurface, causing tremors of doubt to ripple through his confidence. What secrets about his past he'd kept buried still lay beneath the surface? Would the true depths of his journey, struggles for identity, moments of despair, unravel the joy they had just begun to build together? As shadows elongated against the fading light, John realized that to complete this fort, both physically and emotionally, he might need to confront truths he had long avoided. With the sky bleeding into twilight, he mustered his courage. This project had the power not just to reveal their creativity but to unearth his own. Before he reached that next step, he knew he had to decide, how much of himself was he willing to share? His heart raced, teetering on the brink of revelation. What awaited on the other side of this emerging honesty? Would the impending confrontation with his past fortify or undermine what they were building together, a sanctuary for them all against the tides of life's tempests? John took a deep breath, the salty air filling his lungs as he glanced at his grandchildren. They were busy arranging rocks, shells, and bits of driftwood, each piece carefully placed to create their vision of a fort. Yet, despite their enthusiasm, John's heart felt heavy with the weight of unspoken truths. How could he reveal the complexities of his past without dampening their spirit? What had anger, disappointment, and longing taught him about resilience? He felt the urge to pull back, to guard the intricacies of his history under layers of jovial stories. But the moment demanded authenticity. The children's ready smiles reminded him of the open doors he had left firmly locked for far too long. He took another breath, one that filled him with a burgeoning resolve. "All right, I'll share," he announced, albeit with a tremor, drawing their attention. "I want to tell you about my most important lesson." The children's eyes widened, sparkling with the anticipation of a story steeped in adventure. "Once, when I was about your age, I found this old, battered journal my grandfather kept. It was filled with his dreams, hopes, and aspirations," he began, allowing a moment for the shadow of remembrance to wash over him. "You know, sometimes he would talk about his ambitions, about building a life that would make a difference. But he struggled, and that made him frustrated." As John spoke, the fort became a backdrop, a canvas molding their shared experience. Each detail fell into place, from the moment in which he learned resilience from his grandfather's failures to his own attempts at standing resilient against life's challenges. The waves crashed rhythmically, echoing the pulse within him, a reminder of life's constant push and pull. "I realized too late how much he held within," John continued, feeling some unshackling within him, the tipping point of revelation just an edge away. He often said, to pursue a dream is to expose yourself to failure. But I learned that exposing ourselves is also an opportunity to share and learn. "What did you fail at, Grandpa?" one child asked, genuinely curious. He hesitated. Confront the pain? Should he descend into the darker alleys of his past? Each stifled impulse pushed against him like the encroaching tide. Yet, feeling the warmth from their laughter behind him, he could no longer ignore the call for honesty. "I chased many things, eggshells of ambition that cracked under pressure," he answered. "There were businesses that crumbled, opportunities that slipped away, but the hardest part," he paused, swallowing emotions that felt like jagged stones, "was when I distanced myself from my own family in pursuit of those dreams. I thought I was doing all of it for you, but I lost sight of what mattered most." An uncomfortable silence rippled around them. The children's expressions shifted from eager anticipation to thoughtful reception. Would his honesty resonate with them or stifle their enthusiasm? The answer was emerging like the tide: truth could be both a weight and a buoy. "But eventually, I learned to build again," he added urgently, willing to shift the tide, "and it started here, forging connections, nurturing relationships." The children's eyes, accustomed to his storytelling, flickered with understanding. With that acceptance cradling his spirit, he took a step towards them, adjusted their carefully assembled pieces, and uttered, "Each fort we create needs space, not just for dreams, but also for setbacks. They all find a place. Do you think we can make our fort strong enough to hold everyone's dreams and mistakes?" A granddaughter asked, her voice dipping into quiet wonder. "Absolutely," he responded, feeling more certain, now. These facades are made not only of what shines but also the imperfections beneath. As twilight deepened, engulfing them in its embrace, John felt a flicker of hope. Maybe the moment they shared was one not merely for construction, but for enlightenment on life's true texture. What other barriers could he dismantle? What other truths might spring forth as they continued their project? With the weight of yesterday illuminated by the glow of a shared present, he sensed an urgency brewing within him. Would their continued endeavor lead to further revelations? What hidden wisdom could still emerge from this fragility, now that they had chipped at the surface of his story? As the night air intensified, John wondered if he was ready for the next wave of questions, the next step demanding more openness. The horizon held secrets, yet again waiting to surface. Would he unveil them, or would he retreat into the shadows of his own fears? The fort needed a foundation built on honesty, and as the darkness gathered, he realized the tides of change were just beginning. John watched his grandchildren's eyes glitter under the evening sky, the vibrant pinks and purples radiating around them like unfulfilled dreams. They were blissfully unaware of the deeper currents swirling just beneath his calm facade. The fort they were building became a safe refuge, a tentative expression of trust for him to explore. Yet, as shadows lengthened and waves crashed in the distance, he knew that the truth he had begun to share with them came with its own set of challenges. The uncharted territory of vulnerability loomed before him. "Tell us more," the youngest exclaimed, a spark of curiosity igniting among them. John paused, the weight of anticipation pressing on him. To explore the darkness would mean facing the shadows of regret woven through his life. How would he articulate his failures? He had spent a lifetime creating a narrative that glossed over the pain, simplifying his complex choices. But the glimmer of understanding in their eyes urged him on. "There was a moment," he began, steadying his voice, "when I had to confront the reality of my losses. A business I poured everything into folded. I felt defeated, like I was washing away with the tides." The children leaned in closer, their faces growing serious. The stakes of their fort suddenly felt monumental, they now connected to something deeper than just play. "I let my fear dictate my actions. Instead of turning to those I loved for support, I buried myself in work. I thought burying my head in projects would bring me fulfillment," he continued. Each word tore open old wounds once more, but he pressed on. "I moved further away from the very people I was trying to provide for. I couldn't see that I was losing myself in the process." There was a flicker of comprehension in their expressions, a reflection of their own innocent apprehensions about failure. Would they one day chase something that put distance between them and those they loved? The thought gripped John, threatening to anchor him in despair. "But here's the catch," he quickly added, a newfound urgency capturing his voice. "That failure? It taught me resilience. The world doesn't end when something crumbles, it's a chance to rebuild stronger. It pushed me to reflect and discover what really mattered. When I finally returned to my family, I vowed to learn from the past. I had to be present." John noticed the children considering his words, digesting the gravity of life's lessons. Their fort had taken on a solidity of intention, their innocent creation was now a powerful metaphor. Every ounce of disappointment became a lesson, he explained, the conviction in his voice growing. "Like every rock you choose. They may not seem special alone, but together, they can build something incredible. You must allow room for mistakes, just like you give space in your fort for those jagged edges." "Will our fort be strong enough?" his granddaughter asked, a glimmer of concern threading through her inquiry. John smiled softly, feeling the cracks in his own past seep further into his heart. "Yes, if you learn to embrace the imperfections, it will stand tall. Just like each of us." As the final rays of sunlight slipped behind the horizon, a decision began to crystallize within him. The fabric of his life, woven with threads of both success and regret, had a richness that he was ready to explore with them. The flood of emotions felt both daunting and liberating. What if, in opening up, he could cultivate resilience in them too? Could these young minds grasp the tangled nuances of life, woven through joy and sorrow? "I think I can share more stories with you," he said, the words tumbling out. A sense of liberation flooded over him. "There's so much left to discuss, so many lessons I've gleaned from my journey." The children exchanged glances, excitement sparking again. What new revelations lay hidden beneath the surface of his words? "Will you tell us everything?" a grandson urged, clearly eager to dive deeper. "Yes," John confirmed, a sense of purpose igniting within him. "But I might ask you to share some of your own dreams too, and the mistakes you fear." As the coolness of night wrapped around them, John felt an unexpected thrill. Would his past emerge as a beacon for their future? The conversation felt like a bridge, connecting generations through vulnerability. But the question lingered, would he ever be brave enough to face the darkest chapters still hidden within? As they prepared to leave the shore, the foundation of their fort reflected the intricacies of their shared journey, both fragile and resilient. John stood at the edge of this new path, torn between the shadows of what he had left unspoken and the hope of illuminating the unknown. Could the next story shift everything once more? Would the wellspring of his experiences carve opportunities for deeper connections? The dawn light spread over Cape Cod, illuminating the fort that had been built with laughter, creativity, and, importantly, vulnerability. John stood at the water's edge, the waves gently rolling towards him, reflecting the changes within his soul. This journey was no longer solely about revealing a hidden past. It evolved into a purposeful exploration of fear, honesty, and growth. "Hey kids," John called, turning around to find his grandkids perched atop their unfinished fort, eyes sparkling with anticipation. "Are you ready for a new adventure today?" Their eager nods electrified his spirit. Today wouldn't just be about physically completing their project, it was about unveiling deeper truths that would forge meaningful connections. Each moment spent building together had unraveled layers of his guarded heart, but now it was time to confront the core of his legacy head-on. As they assembled materials, John marveled at how the sanctuary they were creating mirrored his own journey, each piece symbolizing not just a story but a lesson of resilience, creativity, and vulnerability. "What's the next step in our design?" he prompted, watching as they animatedly discussed secret compartments and cozy corners. "I want a space for the stories," one of the children yelled excitedly. At that moment, a thought struck John like a bolt of inspiration. That's exactly what he desired, a haven where history could unfold, not just in the form of a narrative but as living memories shared around the warmth of connection. "Yeah, stories," John confirmed, grasping the moment. "It's important, you know. Just like each piece of this fort, every experience I've had can fit inside it if we let it shape us." Overhead, seagulls squawked like enthusiastic spectators, drawing laughter from the children and snapping John back into a focus where fears had no control. With renewed energy, John began to share fragments of his journey, letting the words flow freely, woven into the tasks at hand. "Did I ever tell you about the time I almost gave up on my dream?" he asked, noticing their eager gazes. "I was trying to start a business, but things didn't turn out as I wanted. I lost more than just an investment." The children leaned closer, their faces full of intrigue. "It was tough, but I learned something pivotal. Failure isn't the end, it's a stepping stone. I had to learn resilience. Guess what? That's part of what led me back to you all today." The fort now took shape not solely from wood and shells but also from his experiences, a place where their laughter marked the foundation of growth he had nurtured in silence for too long. Each story brought them closer, and as they worked, he sensed his worries melting away, each anecdote reinforcing the bridge between the past, present, and exciting future. The trepidation that once gripped him turned into eagerness for further revelations, as if the stones they laid within the fort were also building trust among them. But just as the fort began to bloom into its final form, the shadows of his past flickered at the edge of his thoughts. Was he brave enough to discuss the weight of his grandfather's unfulfilled legacy? Would connecting his story with the unspoken fears of his grandchildren cement their bond, or would it drown them in uncertainty? The questions lingered as the fort turned into a sanctuary for exploration, crafted from both shadows and light. "Can you tell us another secret?" his eldest grandchild inquired, knowing there was much more to discover. The uncharted waters of his past beckoned, daring him to dive deeper. "What did you learn from your grandfather's dreams?" Breaths caught in John's chest, the apprehension he felt just moments before now brimming with resolve. This moment was the culmination of his growth, a blend of past and present, of shadows that yearned to find the light. "You see," he began with a steadiness that grew with each word, "my grandfather had dreams that were beautiful and bold, but he struggled to see them through. But it taught me to confront my own fears. It's okay to have dreams that don't pan out. What matters is how we respond to them." The children listened, absorbing his wisdom like sunlight on their upturned faces. They didn't flinch at his failure, instead, they embraced the lessons laced within it. "It means that every setback can be an opportunity for something new," he continued, his voice steadying with certainty. "And that's how we can make our fort strong, by letting all of our experiences shape who we are." As daylight faded, John wrapped his arms around his grandkids, holding them close as they stood before the towering fort that now reflected not just their collective creativity but the unearthing of shared experiences. Just as he had hoped, it became a vessel for learning, connection, and reflection. With an overwhelming sense of accomplishment swirled with gratitude, John saw how far he had come. No longer imprisoned by the past, he recognized the power of honesty in shaping futures. The fort stood resolute against the crashing waves, a testament to their growth and a promise of resilience. "Every story told, every memory shared is a block in this fort," he whispered, more to himself than to them, but the dictum lingered in the salty air, heavy with hope. John had not merely embraced the notion of legacy, he had transformed it into a living dialogue, igniting the embers of courage in his grandchildren's hearts as they prepared to share their dreams. "We built this together," he reflected, beaming proudly. "Let us continue building from here." Their laughter resonated in the twilight, as the sun slipped behind the horizon, reminding John of the radiant journey yet to come. Now, this is the moment to show your support. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and share your appreciation. Comment your reactions and theories about this ending, we want to hear your thoughts. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your true support matters. Join the journey of personal transformation today.